Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the debut episode of Blue is Live. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It feels good to be back for the 500th time when I've said I'm going to do a podcast, but here I am actually doing it. Feels good to be back. If you don't know, my name is Tanner Blue. Just my whole life I've been a big sports fan. I went to school for sports media, communications, have done podcasts, have done shows on and off throughout the years, but here I am finally in the comfort of my own home studio. I got everything I need. So, I want to make this thing happen. I want to finally go for the gusto here and try to get this podcast rolling and do what I know I can. And that's come in here and talk sports and talk music and whatever we want to talk about. So, thank you guys so much for tuning in and being a part of this community and being a part of this team. This is the debut episode of Blue is Live. We've got lots to talk about. We're going to get into the Baker Mayfield to the Carolina Panthers, my Carolina Panthers, so I'm excited. We've got Tiger Woods, his thoughts on live golf and what's been developing there. We've got the British Open coming this weekend, so we're going to see how that works. And then we're also going to talk about Demaryius Thomas, who unfortunately did pass away this past year. We're going to talk about his CTE diagnosis that he had whenever his brain was delivered to science, and they researched it, and they found that he had level 2 CTE or stage 2. So without further ado, guys, let's get right into it, and let's get into this thing. Baker Mayfield to the Carolina Panthers. So I know I'm a little late on this topic, but I want to touch on it. Me being a big Panthers fan, I've even got a Panthers podcast that I do. Ever since Cam Newton left, not the second time, the first time, we've been struggling at the quarterback position for a long time. And, we made the Sam Darnold trade last year. Absolutely did not work. We drafted Matt Corral this year. Is he ready? Not ready. We're not sure. I like a lot of his potential. I like a lot of things that he can do, but is he ready yet? Is he the guy that's going to come in and save Matt Rule's job this year? For a third-round quarterback, that's really high expectations. So what do the Panthers do? There have been talks about this Baker Mayfield trade for quite some time. Obviously, the Browns traded for Deshaun Watson. They gave up a boatload of picks for him. And, despite everything that's going on there, we kept hearing about, hey, are the Panthers going to get Baker Mayfield? It's really between us and the Seahawks. Those were the two teams that really needed quarterbacks. And I think it was a matter of money, and they finally got the money right. The Panthers only had to pay $4.8 million, I think, of the contract. The Browns ate the rest. The Panthers gave up a fifth-round pick. A fifth-round pick for a starting quarterback in the NFL. Despite what you might think of Baker Mayfield, how good he is, what he's worth, fifth-round pick, which can turn into a fourth-round pick if he plays 70% of the snaps this season, which I'm going to go ahead and say that will likely happen. So, the Panthers, looking at it from a non-biased perspective as best as I can, looking at the team as a whole, when Christian McCaffrey is healthy, they have a fantastic running back. The best running back in the league when healthy. He hasn't been healthy in the past 2 years. They've got some nice playmakers on the outside. I like DJ Moore a lot. Robbie Anderson has had his moments. Last year was not one of them. He had a lot of drops. He had a bad year. I think he can bounce back. But in the beginning, it seemed like he was not very happy with Sam Darnold being his quarterback. And then he's not going to be happy with Baker Mayfield being his quarterback either. So we will see how that goes. And then we've got Terrace Marshall Jr., a guy they drafted last year in the mid-rounds. He's got a lot of potential. He's had a good mini camp. He had a good camp and not a training camp. They said he looked good out there. We'll see how that goes. I have a lot of hope for him. We want to see him do well. And then you got Tommy Tremble. He's a guy they drafted in the later rounds in the tight end position last year. I like Tommy Tremble. I think he's got a lot of potential. And then we look at the defense. They've got some good young pieces there. Brian Burns, solid player. J.C. Horn, the first-round pick last year, he was hurt. We'll see how he does there. I have a lot of hope for him. I think he can be a fantastic player, but he just was hurt last year. I think he played 2 games, made it to the third game, was out for the season. Jeremy Chin at the safety position. They got Shaq Thompson at linebacker. I mean, so they got some guys. And the biggest thing, and that now, right now, this is just on paper. We don't know this because we haven't seen them play. But on paper, the Panthers have a much improved offensive line as opposed to last year in many seasons. They haven't had a great offensive line or even a serviceable offensive line since like 2013. They have a first-round pick this year. They draft, I can't pronounce his name. I'm just going to call him Icky from NC State. Kid's from Charlotte. He's going to be a fantastic pick. I like him a lot. They get him at the left tackle position. I have almost no doubts about this kid. He's going to be a very, very good football player. They bring in some free agents. They bring in Bradley Bozeman. They bring in Austin Corbett. Some guys that are very solid starters. They even draft some guys in the later rounds. And then they drafted Brady Christensen last year. He was a little bit of they couldn't really figure out what they wanted to do with him. If you're a Matt Rule fan, you weren't really sure if his arms were long enough to play left tackle. So he did a little bit of left tackle, left guard, right guard. He kind of played everywhere, honestly. So you could slide him in one of those positions. And on paper, the Panthers have a much improved offensive line. That's huge. So, coming into this, I was never a huge Baker Mayfield fan. In fact, if you go back and listen to some of the Panthers podcasts, which I will put in the description, of course, for you to listen to, I was critical of the move. I thought that they didn't need to do it. I would have rather go with Matt Corral and see what he had and see how the season goes. Because I'm not the biggest fan of Matt Rule. I think he's done a lot of bad things as the coach. But when you take a look at it, looking at it now, I think Baker Mayfield has been severely underrated the past couple months. He's been getting a lot of hate, a lot of criticism thrown his way ever since the Browns traded for Deshaun Watson. Obviously, he was going to get traded somewhere, but, I think I think he's been underrated. I mean, if you look at not this season, but the past season, they made the playoffs. Granted, they had a very good offensive line, a very good running game, and a pretty solid defense. Baker was out there making plays, and, he's a gunslinger. He's got the arm talent. He's got that mentality, kind of that dog mentality, which I like. We haven't had that since 2015 Cam Newton. It's been a while. So it's nice to see a guy that's going to come in with a chip on his shoulder. And if you watch that press conference the other day, whenever the Panthers had him on, he's fired up. He's ready to play. So was I the biggest fan of this move when I thought about it before it happened? No, I wasn't. I didn't think that this guy really could bring anything to the table. But now that I sit back and I look at it, from a personnel perspective, the Panthers got a guy who's not arguably, is better than Sam Darnold at quarterback. A guy that's won in this league. He's won a playoff game. A guy he's got some experience, and he's had his moments where he's looked pretty damn good. Now, do we know which Baker Mayfield we're going to get? We don't know that because last season he was hurt and he didn't play very well. And we had all the stuff with OBJ going on, and we had all the, off-season stuff, and then we had, where they traded him, obviously, and then where they talk about the Browns saying, we want a grown-up at quarterback. I mean, just throwing it in his face. Just, he's got a chip on his shoulder, and I've been critical of him in the past. At some points I like him, sometimes I haven't through his career, but he is on my team now, so I'm going to root for him. But from a non-biased perspective, I think he's got a good opportunity to come in here and play some good football. He's got some talent beside him, and it's his job to lose. We saw how Sam Darnold played last year. People say it's going to be a competition. It's not going to be a competition. If he loses this battle to Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, I would be shocked. I would be astonished if he lost this competition. He's going to be the guy day one, week one, and guess who was playing week one? The Browns in Carolina, and I will be there at that game, so I'm very excited for that. I go to the home opener every year for the Panthers, so I'm very excited for that. But looking at it, he's got a fresh start. He's got some weapons, and I think he's going to win the job. There's no way he doesn't win this job. The only cons I could see of this is the head coach, I don't care for Matt Rule that much. However, I will say that they did do a nice job of bringing in some nice assistant coaches, offensive, defensive coordinators, assistant coaches, guys that have experience. Matt Rule tried to do it the college way with young guys, unproven guys. It didn't work. So he goes the opposite direction this offseason, or the front office does. They bring in guys that have experience. So I like that move. It's actually funny because Ben McAdoo, who is our new offensive coordinator, I will say not a great head coach, but he was solid as an offensive coordinator. When you look at the draft class, I believe it was 2018 or 2017, I can't remember off the top of my head, whenever Baker and Sam came out, he had them at the bottom of his list for quarterbacks that he wanted, that he graded. And he had Josh Allen up there at the top. Granted, we don't have the luxury of having Josh Allen, but these were his two quarterbacks that he was the lowest on. And that's the two quarterbacks that he's going to be able to coach. So that's an interesting thing to look forward to. And if we're looking at this from a perspective, this is the only other con I could see, is that this Baker needs to play either amazing or he needs to play bad if you're a Panthers fan. And what I mean by that is the worst thing he can do is come in and play very average, because that's going to put us in a position where if he plays very average, there's a possibility, a strong possibility, he's going to want a long-term contract. You know he is. Are you willing to tie yourself to him for X amount of years, or are you going to not settle for average play and then move on from him from a year and then look elsewhere to the draft or Matt Corral? So if you're a Panthers fan, I think you either want to look at this in two ways. One, he plays amazing or very, very good, takes us to the playoffs or wild card potential. See what happens. Secondly, if he plays terrible, then we know he's not the guy. We move on, we wipe our hands clean. We got rid of a 5th or 4th round pick. We only paid $5 million. Shout out to the Panthers front office. If this works out, it's a home run. If it doesn't, it looks like a failure, but not in terms of what we gave up to get him. I think this is a solid play by the Panthers front office. And, it makes me a little excited to go into week one. I wanted Matt Corral to play and to start, but I was very nervous because I didn't know if he was ready, and I didn't want to see him come out and just not be ready. And after a couple games, his career in Carolina is over. No one thinks he's the guy. We know we have in Sam Darnold. It's not it. So I'm excited. We're going to see what the Panthers can do. I think they've got some talent around. They've got some pieces. Now, if Baker comes in and with the chip on his shoulder and plays like we know he can, it could be a good thing in Carolina, and I'm going to be very interested to see how that goes. All right. Next, we are going to talk about Demaryius Thomas and his CTE diagnosis. Unfortunately, Demaryius Thomas did pass away. I believe it was in December of last year. However, we don't know the official cause of death yet, which is interesting. I'm not sure what the coroner or what's going on there. I don't want to speculate. But we do not know his official cause of death yet. But we did get a report coming out last week saying that Demaryius Thomas did have stage 2 CTE. Excuse me. First off, I want to start off by saying this. First off, rest in peace to DT. Condolences to his family, his friends, his loved ones, anyone involved in the situation. Terrible tragedy. He was a very, very good football player. He was a Super Bowl champion. He had some really good years with the Broncos. The guy was a very good player. And he retired somewhat early. I think it was 32, 33 years old. He had a pretty successful NFL career. And it's sad that it ended up the way it did, and now we're talking about this topic now. The guy had stage 2 CTE. This is a topic that has really interested me for the past several years. When I was in high school and college, anytime we would do some sort of project, I always pick sports. And I remember one time for one of my classes that I took, we had to do a report on something, and I picked CTE because I thought it was, an interesting topics. This was around the time, this was around the time that the movie with Will Smith came out, Concussion, which, some people, despite what you might think of the movie, I think there was some good parts in there. I thought it did a nice job of exploring a part of the NFL, the dark side, not necessarily the NFL, but the dark side of a player's life post playing, and then what they go through. Especially with Demaryius Thomas here and so many players before him, and unfortunately so many players after him, they suffer in silence. We look at some of the stuff that was talked about. We know some of the symptoms. I mean, it's very typical from concussions. First off, CTE does stand for chronic traumatic encephalopathy. If you do not know what that is, look it up. Basically, a degenerative brain disease. It can only be diagnosed once you pass away. So not only are these guys suffering, there's no treatment plan because we're very early. We're very early in the stages of looking at how this affects people and what really causes it. As we know, multiple hits, multiple head traumas to the head, whether it be football, whether it be UFC, mixed martial arts, professional wrestling, anything that deals with, the head being affected and hit multiple times, you could be a cause. You could be at risk for CT. And guys are suffering in silence. Boston University was the university that did the study on his brain. And they've done a lot of studies on former players and athletes' brains after their brain has been donated to science for research after they pass away. I do know that at some point in the past couple years, I'm not sure the exact time, Demaryius Thomas did get in a bad car accident. That resulted in him having a lot of seizures. Apparently his head was really hit hard on the windshield of the vehicle he was in, however that happened. So he started having a lot of seizures. His doctors and his family believe that that had a lot to do with it. He was showing signs of really suffering. If you watch the interview he did with, I believe it was on ESPN, his family, his parents, they did an interview on ESPN and they talked about it where, he was showing symptoms of headaches, really bad headaches. He was just confused. He just felt something was wrong with him inside, but he couldn't explain what it was. And it's just so terrible to think about that. To just have something going on with you and not being able to express or get the help that you need because we just don't know that much about it. This has really just been brought to the forefront of the media's attention and the general public's attention the past 10 years. I mean, the movie Concussion really blew it up in terms of a mainstream, appeal. It's just been terrible. Now, I will say this. A lot of people have given the NFL a lot of crap over the past couple years for not taking player safety. It's their fault. It's this, it's that. You can't blame them 100%. I will say they definitely do have some blame there. The NFL is a product. It is an entertainment industry. They want their guys on the field so they can maximize potential and maximize profits and get more ratings and get more views. We understand that. And these players understand that. A lot of them understand that, hey, they're putting their bodies and their lives on the line for X amount of years to make as much money as possible and to play a sport that they love. Maybe not necessarily thinking about the long-term side effects of that later on down the road because you're presented with such an incredible opportunity at the time. Taking a look at it, the NFL has done more in the past couple years. They've been more strict about the concussion protocol. They've donated money to research for this. And I think that's something that's going to get better. It's something the NFL doesn't openly talk about because they know it's sort of in the background and it gets brought up every so often. And it really creates a scary picture of what life can be like post your career. I mean, we've seen so many interviews, documentaries, reports on former players. You talk about Jack Webster, the center for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Excuse me, not Jack Webster, Mike Webster, the center for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He really was the first case that broke open. I mean, if you go and look up and do research, the stuff that guy was going through was just absolutely terrible post NFL career, and they did research on his brain, and I mean, it looked like the brain of a 80 or 90-year-old Alzheimer's patient. I mean, it was terrible. You look at Chris Benoit, the professional wrestler. They did a scan on his brain, and they looked at it. He had the brain of a 90 or 80-year-old patient with Alzheimer's. I mean, it's terrible. You look at this stuff and the things these guys go through, and the head trauma, the hits, the blows to the head. It's scary. And now that we know about this stuff, I would not be surprised, and I think it's already happened. You've seen a decrease in popularity of young kids and younger adults playing professional football, playing sports, especially football, that deal with contact to the head, because they see this now. 20, 30, 40 years ago, we didn't know about this. You had a concussion, suck it up, take some pills, and get back on the field. We got a game to play. Now, you see this stuff on the media, what could happen to you if you're, playing after your career, or you're just retired. You never know. I mean, that could be you. You could be suffering in silence, as many people are right now. So it is a very scary thing. A lot of parents are letting their kids play football. I don't have kids, but in the future when I do, I love football. Do I know if I'm going to let my kids play? I don't know that, because you never know. And it's super early in this, but it's scary to think about. So, we'll see where this goes. Hopefully we do get an end result and see what the cause of death was for Demaryius Thomas. However, rest in peace to him. Rest in peace, and condolences to his family. And it's just terrible. The best thing that can come out of this is that they donated his brain for research. Maybe it can bring to light how bad the situation is and what we can do to possibly find some sort of treatment, find some sort of cure, something that can be helpful before you pass away. And it's terrible. So we will keep our updates on that, and condolences to his family. Rest in peace, Demaryius Thomas. You have been and will be missed. Lastly, Tiger Woods talking about live golf. We got the article pulled up here for ESPN. I'll link it down below. Apologies if I mispronounce this guy's name wrong. Mark Shalabik, ESPN senior writer. If I said that wrong, I do apologize, Mark. I will link your article in the description. So we have the Open Championship, the British Open, coming this week. And Tiger Woods is playing. He took last major off. He's still dealing with that leg injury from that car accident. If you haven't been around the world of golf, Live Golf is a new golf organization coming around, backed by Saudi Arabia money, and that seems to be the big point that a lot of people can't get on board with. But I'm not here to talk about the specifics of that. I'm going to talk about Tiger Woods' comments on that. So, Tiger, it was reported that he got an offer from Live Golf for $1 billion to come play. He turned it down, as he probably should have. But that's a lot of money to turn down. And I know a lot of people are saying this, that, and the other, but you don't know how you would react in that position if you were offered that kind of money to come play on the tour. Regardless of what your morals might be or how you see things politically, it's tough to say no when you're put in that position. It's easy to say back here, oh, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't say yes to that. I could never. You don't know that until you get put in that position. So, Tiger was being interviewed at the Open, doing a press conference, asking, what his thoughts were on, the guys joining Live. Some of the higher level players, Bryson DeChambeau, Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka. These guys receiving big guaranteed contracts. Obviously, Phil Mickelson, he's the biggest one. Can't forget about Phil. When asked what he thought about it, Tiger Woods said, "I disagree with it. I think that what they've done is they've turned their back on what has allowed them to get to this position." Obviously, going on saying, "Who knows what's going to happen in the near future with world ranking points, the criteria for entering major championships. The governing body is going to have to figure that out." He then went on to say, "Some of these players may not ever get a chance to play in a major championship. That is a possibility. We do not know that for sure yet. It's up to all the major championship bodies to make that determination. But that is a possibility that some players will never ever get a chance to play in a major championship. Never get a chance to experience this right here. Walk down the fairways at Augusta National. That, to me, I just don't understand." So, if you watch the video, which I did, first off, that's Tiger's opinion. And he wasn't brash. He wasn't arrogant. He wasn't anything about that. He just simply stated, "Hey, this is my opinion on this. You guys asked me, he's going to talk." So, obviously, Roy McIlroy and other players, but especially Roy, have been super vocal about their distaste and their disdain for other players leaving the tour and going to Live Golf. So McIlroy has become the kind of the PGA's golden boy here the past month or two. When they ask him about Live Golf, he is there defending the PGA Tour, and he is there saying that this is wrong, we're right. Now, that may be his opinion, and that's fine. But I understand what Tiger's saying from a perspective of, we don't know how it's going to turn out with the majors, because the majors are their own governing bodies. At Augusta, if you've won Augusta, it doesn't matter if you're playing for Live. As of now, you can go and play Augusta because you've won there before. That's up to them, not the PGA Tour. So it'll be interesting to see how they decide to keep going with that. But what Tiger said, I get it. You work your whole life, and you grow up, you watch golf, and it's like any other sport. There's the major championships, the Super Bowl, the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup. For golf, you get 4 majors. Those are the big ones. Those are the ones that you dream about. Every person that's played golf ever, or had aspirations of maybe going somewhere and playing golf, you think about yourself on the course like, just imagine if I could ever play at Augusta National, win a major, win a green jacket, anything. These guys might not ever get a chance to do that are just jumping straight to Live, because they could be getting banned from the PGA, because the PGA has been very strict about that. So I understand what Tiger's saying in terms of, hey, you're taking the guaranteed money, you're making big bucks, you're doing well for yourself, that's great, but for the thrill of the sport, you might not get a major. You may never get to win or play at Augusta. That's the holy grail of golf. Now, some people have different priorities when it comes to what they prioritize in life. Would you rather do it would you take less and have a chance to win a major? Have your name be remembered forever in history? Or would you just stick on Live Tour, make as much money as possible? Maybe you never get to play in a major. Maybe you never win one. Who knows? Tiger's won 15 of them, so he knows what it's like. But some of these guys I might not know. But I think the other side of the coin, which I've mentioned, it's so hard to say what you would do without being in that position. Some of these guys that have coming up, these younger guys that you might not really have heard of, some of the bigger names, they've made pretty good money. But some of these smaller guys getting this guaranteed money on these contracts, it's so hard for them to say no. You work your ass off to get where they're at. You might not make much on the PGA Tour. You got to pay for your travel. You got to work off sponsorships, essentially. And some of these guys, they might not ever win a big tournament. They might not ever win a tournament. They could go play very average on Live Golf Tour and make triple the money they were going to make. Can you blame the guys? Maybe some of these guys, maybe they don't feel good about their decision to join Live. Who knows? But looking at it, it's tough to say what you would do without being in their position. Would you turn away that guaranteed money? You can't say because you're not in that position. And if anyone watching this show does get in that position, please let us know, because it's an interesting topic. I'm a big golf fan. I'm a big golf fan. I want to see what's best for the sport. I like to see competition. I like to see the best players duking it out. But, I've only been used to the PGA Tour. I've never seen this other league. I haven't even watched Live yet. I need to check it out and see what's going on. But as far as at the end of the day, these guys, they bust their ass. They want to get paid. And Live is offering that opportunity for some of these guys who might not be able to get a paycheck. Maybe they don't care about a major. At the end of the day, they might retire, and they might have some pretty good money in their bank account. So, depends on what you value. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the debut episode of Blue is Live. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel here at Blue Sports Media. We got more stuff coming up. This is just kind of the pilot. Episodes are going to be different. They're going to be longer. They're going to be bigger. They're going to be better. I just wanted to get something out there, see the general response, and just kind of get this thing rolling. So thank you so much. My name is Tanner Blue. Thank you for following us here on Blue Sports Media on the Blue is Live podcast. We will see you guys next week. Thank you.
From the east to the west, from the north to the south, for the man in the middle. Let's kick it back like we back in 97. 23, I'm jump, man, you're about to learn a lesson. When it comes to the dreams, boy, I'm all about impressing. They can never tell me no, cause I stay on my finessing.